Well, I'm very excited today. We have with us the legendary Zoey Tur. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you.
Zoey, you are a legend in Los Angeles. You are a trans journalist. You are a scientist. You invented the new modern news helicopter.
Right. The engineering. I helped design it and implement some of the first breaking news helicopters. It was a lot of engineering, a lot of on-the-job training to figure out how to do the XYZ coordinates and GPS and interface everything. But through a lot of cuts and bruises, we were able to manage to get some of these new technologies aboard the aircraft and do aerial news gathering, which revolutionized everything.
Everything.
Ruined news.
You were the first high-speed high-speed chase on the air, right?
Yeah, we did the very first high-speed police pursuit.
Right.
Guy was killed at the end of the pursuit.
And it was live on television.
Live on television.
Never happened before.
Never happened. Somebody being killed right on TV, and it was a great teaching moment. Because people got to see breaking news as and where it happens.
Well, you were also Reginald Denny in the LA riots, right? You were the one who...
We videotaped and broadcast live the attack of Reginald Denny at Florence and Normandy, the very spark of the worst rioting in modern U.S. history.
OJ Simpson.
I found OJ Simpson first as a pilot reporter. And
during the high-speed chase, we know that the Bronco's out there. We know that he's on the highway, and everybody's looking for him. And you're in the helicopter, and you see the white Bronco.
Yeah,
that's you.
I happened to fly down to where I thought he'd be, which was the gravesite of Nicole Simpson Brown, the woman that he was, accused of murdering, and that he was found liable for having murdered in the civil case. So I went down there to see if I could find OJ. I thought he'd go to the gravesite and kill himself, do the right thing, but he didn't. And so
that would have been the story. That would have been
maybe that would have been justice. But then we found him on the 5 freeway, the El Toro Y, and the rest was history.
Tell me a little bit about your story.
Well, I was born a poor black child. No, I'm sorry. No, I knew at about 5 years old, 6 years old, that there was something different about me. But there was no diet, there was no words, there was no conversation that I could have. I didn't know how to express it. And when I tried to express it, I had a very abusive father. And so I made a lot of trips to the emergency room. Oh, dear. And I developed a great love for medicine. And I thought I'd be practicing medicine these days, but no, it was really, I fell into television news. And I did that for a long time, but throughout my career, I knew I was transgender. My kids were growing up. My daughter's, now 31 years old. She's an NBC News reporter in London, Katie Tur. I have a son who's in medical school, and they're successful, they're well-adjusted adults, and I thought it was time to come out. Also, if I had to stay in that closet any longer, I would have committed suicide.
Do you think you've had a harder time coming out later in life?
Of course, because people have an impression of who you are. And when you're successful and you're in the media, you paint yourself in a corner, and you don't know. It's hard to be who you really are because you just start acting like that character you play on TV. And it becomes
you become a copy of a copy of a copy.
I know, right. And it's just a lie. And so now I'm my authentic self. I had hoped I was gay, because it would have been better than admitting that I was trans, I thought, because of the difficulties.
This was like in your 30s and 40s, maybe?
I met a boyfriend that I started dating at Randy and Fenton's Christmas party.
Stop it.
Yeah. I started going out with this doctor I met there, and he was a lot of fun, and I tried being, gay, and I loved being treated, like the woman, but the reality was I wasn't gay. I was miserable at it. And then it was like these little lines in the sand, like I'll cross this line. And eventually I wound up confessing more and more to myself. Then one night, in May of 2013, I I want to be a woman. God make me a hot woman. And so, I got woman.
What would your life have been if you had been able to acknowledge that early?
I don't know what my life would have been, and I would have had this fun youth, and I wouldn't have had the gender dysphoria and the depression, but look at the great things I got to do, and I got to have kids and raise kids and bring life into this world. So I'm so happy about that. I wouldn't give that away for anything. I love my kids. So do I regret it? No, I don't. What I do regret is, waiting so long to talk about this. The first time I've ever been brave, and I've done like all these macho people think these are brave things. I've rescued 54 people from 22-foot seas, 60-knot winds at night with the helicopter, and that kind of stuff, and the pursuits and other things that I've done with saving lives. But the fact is, when I came out and I was willing to be honest with myself, was the first time in my life I was ever honest and brave.
What was the blowback you received when you...
It's like a country record. You lose your family, you lose your job, you lose your car, you lose everything. And then once you transition and you have the sexual reassignment surgery and the cranial facial surgery, and I'm like 70% there. I still have more things to do. But as you go through this, you start getting, the car back, the dog back, I don't think I'll get the ex-wife back. I don't want the ex-wife.
Your daughter had some problems in the beginning with it.
Yeah.
Your son was
who can blame her?
Yeah. No, your dad. It was Dad.
Dad, and Dad was this heroic person, and people loved her father on the news.
You were this dashing, helicopter
pilot reporter. When TMZ broke the story, and 28 million people now knew, I went from being the heroic helicopter news pilot to the transsexual or the transgender person. And I became, to some, a freak. I became, to the trans exclusionary radical feminist, I became a rapist pedophile. And to a lot of transgender people, I became like hope, a symbol for hope. So I wound up, and I still do, spend like an hour to 2 hours every day answering people's letters and texts. And there's so many people in pain. Anyone that's calls themselves transgender or identifies as transgender, there's a 42% suicide attempt rate. This is a health epidemic. You lose so much, and it's like the very people that you need most aren't there for you. So, look, anyone that wants to be an ally, I welcome.
Recently, Patricia Arquette sort of jumped into the trans
Yes.
conversation, and it makes sense because her sister is Alexis. What do you think of celebrities jumping into the conversation?
I think it's very positive if they educate themselves and they understand what they're talking about. I think celebrity is very powerful. Celebrity changes the way our youth think about things. But, we'll get some haters out there. We've seen it. We've seen it in the hip-hop community and also the mainstream media. Even journalists have been difficult to deal with.
And you have personal experience with that?
Yes, I was told when I came out, or I was about to come out, by several news directors that I'd worked for, that they said, you'll never work again. This is going to kill your career. When I was asked to be on TMZ and tell my story, I cooperated because I didn't want TMZ or the tabloids or the media telling my story. I wanted to control the narrative.
Yeah.
And I was able to and people took it seriously. For the very first time, I think people in the mainstream media and the tabloids treated it with respect. Then comes Bruce Jenner and the Kardashian train wreck over the horizon. This is a Kardashian cast member. We've watched the surgeries. We've watched the transition. There is nothing to, like coming out. She came out on the Kardashians. And it's just like the emperor's new clothes, and we're just not supposed to notice it.
Well, but
this politically correct. Give me a break. Jenner transitioned already.
But
the only one that doesn't seem to know is the media.
Does being a Jenner Kardashian train wreck, does it help or hurt the trans community? Because
it doesn't help. It doesn't help because
he's a joke, because they're a joke, because they're easy.
Jenner lost the narrative. Jenner allowed the tabloid press to tell the story. You learned about Jenner's transition on the walls of supermarket tabloids.
But until Bruce self-identifies, don't you think that he has to make a statement?
Oh, of course, there'll be a statement timed for the May sweeps. And time for the release of a reality show. And that's fine. But the fact is, my community we're seeing people die every day. We need our role models.
But if the Kardashians are America's first family, which, then now
Really?
we all know a transgender person, and that can only be good.
I hope you're right, but Jenner is starting to lose friends. And there'll be the religious fallout. And but Jenner's life is going to be so different. But as she sticks with it and is open about it, keeps a sense of humor, she'll have an opportunity to win people back and win me back, because I need her. I need her, because I need her as a role model. I mean, to have the world's greatest athlete in your camp?
No, I mean, that's
like having you in my camp. This is somebody that's been repressed, somebody that has been pushed down and controlled and managed, and we may see a new, just somebody bloom. And hopefully it'll be on TV.
Is she going to be hot?
As hot as, a 65-year-old woman.
I think
And as my daughter said, who transitions, to be a middle-aged woman? Like where you can date 30-year-old women to like now 70-year-old men. One thing that we should discuss also is female to males. It's a little bit different. Many have something called polycystic ovarian syndrome, where there is a reduction in the production of estrogen and a rise in testosterone, and you have a masculizing effect
occurring naturally.
Right, because of an impaired ovarian system.
Oh, okay.
So you see a rise in testosterone. So you may see male-like traits, and with hormone replacement therapy, if it's properly diagnosed, it can be treated, and it can kind of adjust people and get them back to where they would be.
So you're saying that they might think that they're transgender when actually it's just a medical situation that...
Correct. And that's why it's important to get this out in the open. And also, and to diagnose it as early as possible. Like, it should be diagnosed in elementary school, junior high school. You want to delay puberty until a child is of age and understands the consequences before you start the cross-hormone therapy. There's no harm or foul by delaying the puberty, but if you allow puberty to go forward, you have the masculizing effects with male to females, and with female to males, you can have significant changes as well. But also to make you understand, or try to make you understand, and this is a very hard concept, sexuality and gender identity is really, its basis is in genetics. At the 10-week mark in utero, we're all female. The 9th chromosome lights up and wakes up for males and says, hey, I'm male. The vagina inverts, the testicles drop, and there are chemical changes, and so you have males and you have females. But with the transgender, transsexual person, something happens. It could be genetics, it could be something that happens in utero. We're not completely sure, but there are differences in the brain, the bed strea of the brain, or also corpus callosum. And there's a number of differences that we're now seeing in fast or fMRI scans. So there are differences, but the question is, and this is controversial, can you change the sexuality of somebody based on hormones alone? And I don't think that's possible. There has to be a predisposition or a genetic difference in the brain itself. We're really on the cutting edge here. There's not a lot of medical data available because it wasn't something that physicians wanted to research. But now we're seeing more research, and we have this fMRI scan technology that's made a world of difference. So it's the reason that the DSM-5 was changed to move this from mental disorder to genetics. It's the reason that I can go get an FAA medical certificate again, because I'm not mentally ill. It's the reason that Obama now is talking about, transgender as a civil right. It's Eric Holder supported the EEOC and now folded gender identity into the 1964 Civil Rights Act, because this is not mental illness, it's genetics. And the more intelligent, the better educated you are, the more you understand and accept that about lesbians, gays, people that are bisexual, and people that are transgender. Enough with the silliness and the reparative therapy, the coercive reparative therapy, it's fraud.
Let's talk a little bit about Transparent.
When I heard that Jill Soloway was doing this show, I wanted to hate it. You know, they cast Jeffrey Tambor, a 70-year-old, in the role of this transgender person who was going to transition. And I thought that was just a cheap sight gag. Then I watched the show, and I just, this is really good. And I started getting it. And I think it's a very powerful show. And there have been some scenes in that show, in some of the episodes, that are just like I couldn't watch because it was so close to home with the Meshuggah family and you know, issues of having to go to the bathroom in public when you're transitioning. And so I thought Jill Soloway did really an excellent job. Jeffrey Tambor has been great, and it's funny. And when there were two pivotal moments. One was the State of the Union address where Obama talked about, actually mentioned the transgender word.
Yeah.
That was shocking, right?
You felt shockwaves around
Huge.
Yeah.
And then Transparent winning 2 Golden Globes. That paved the way for me. Because while it may have been acceptable to put a trans person on some sort of talk show or put them as a trans character on a show that has a trans character, this was putting a journalist in the news media and in the mainstream media, and would the public accept that? And to Inside Edition's credit, they gave me a shot and they put me on the air, and they've had huge press, and as you know, and they've received a lot of props for it. You know, Charles Lockman, a conservative guy, said, "Do you want to make history?" And he said, "Yeah," and he hired me within 3 minutes. So here's a man that got it.
Right.
I feel like, you know, like the first black performer to be allowed to be on TV. It was Bill Cosby, I Spy. And there was an actual debate whether or not America can accept and allow a black man to star in a television series.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
And now it's like the same discussion.
But I think in 5 years there'll be 100 or 1,000.
I'm going to be a big talk show host.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm taking this seat.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first.
Yeah. Do they have this in I don't know, pink?
Sure.
Okay.
We can find it.